It was spring break, and I was 19 that year when my family decided to take a trip to a small cabin way out in Wisconsin. It was just me, my mom, and my little brother, who was 6 at the time. We had planned to stay in the cabin for the entire week, and part of the reason we chose Wisconsin was to check out some smaller towns and maybe find a place we could think about moving to later on. Anyway, the cabin my mom reserved was somewhere we had never been before, and I don't think she realized how far out it really was from any town. She was probably just more focused on getting a good price. It ended up being way up north and about 40 minutes from any kind of stores or shopping areas. I guess it was a good way to test how we do living somewhere more remote. The drive there took a little over 11 hours. I drove the first few hours, and my mom took over for the rest. We got to the cabin right around sunset. It looked beautiful, the orange colors of the sky fading over the thick trees and wildlife. It was a huge change from the big city life we were used to, with tall buildings and busy streets. The cabin itself looked old right away. Everything inside creaked, and it didn't seem like it was built by a professional crew. Still, it was a cabin, and it was good enough for us. We spent that first night getting settled in, trying out the old wood-burning fireplace, and just relaxing after the long trip. I ended up dozing off for most of the evening. My mom went to bed early, around 8 o'clock, but since I had that long nap, I stayed up a bit later. My little brother was already tucked into his room, so it was just me hanging out in the main area. I sat by the fireplace, scrolling on my phone for a bit, and then decided I could use some fresh air, so I headed out to the back porch. It was a small wooden deck with a worn-out-looking fire pit in the middle and a few old chairs around it. I sat down and looked out into the woods. The night was completely still. No cars, no noise from roads, just the occasional sound of a bird calling way off in the distance and the trees moving with the breeze. I really liked it. Being that far up north, though, it was colder than I thought it would be. I noticed a pile of logs stacked up along the side of the cabin and figured I'd try to get a fire going. I lit it up without any trouble, and the fire burned steadily in the pit, so it wasn't as shaky as I first thought. I sat out there for a while, just soaking in the moment since I never really got chances like that. After about half an hour, a sudden sharp noise came from somewhere out in the woods. It happened so fast and out of nowhere that I jumped a little. Honestly, I had no idea what it could have been. It sort of sounded like something heavy striking wood, like an axe hitting a tree, but it was only one single sound. I figured it couldn't really be anyone nearby because we were way out in the middle of nowhere. It was pitch black beyond the little ring of light from the fire, so I couldn't see anything out there. But whatever made the noise, it sounded too close for comfort. I stayed out there another 5 minutes or so, but that peaceful feeling I had before was gone. I just couldn't shake this nervous, uneasy feeling. Finally, I put the fire out and went back inside. From the sound of things, my mom and brother were fast asleep already. I still wasn't very tired myself, probably because of the nap earlier, or maybe the strange noise had me too on edge. I hung out in the living room, watching movies I had saved on my phone since there was no Wi-Fi. About 15 minutes into the movie, I heard something. I paused it and listened carefully. I couldn't tell if it was just the old cabin creaking because someone rolled over in bed or if maybe the wind was rattling the walls. It gave me that same uneasy feeling again, though. I wasn't used to being out in the middle of nowhere, so maybe I was just getting spooked over nothing. But then, just a minute later, I heard another noise, this time from the opposite side of the cabin, not near the bedrooms. It came from right outside the wall next to where I was sitting. The only thing over there was a window. I leaned a little closer, trying to hear better, and just when I thought maybe I had imagined it, a loud, heavy banging hit the front door. It shook the whole wall. I froze for a second. Then I heard my mom jump out of bed and hurry down the hallway, asking what was going on. I was already standing up, feeling that something was seriously wrong. I told her someone was at the door. I could tell she was just as scared as I was. She ran back to grab her phone and started calling 911 because there was no reason anyone should have been out there, in the dark, pounding on our door. While she called, I walked carefully up to the door and looked out through the peephole. It was super dark outside, no porch lights or anything, but I could just make out the shape of a man standing close to the door, staring straight ahead, and in his hand, I could see the outline of a big wooden axe. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I tried to come up with any reason why this wasn't as bad as it looked. Maybe he needed help or was lost, but none of it really made sense. He never said anything, never called out or explained why he was there. He just kept slamming on the door over and over while my mom was still on the phone with the operator. It was hard to tell how much time passed, but it felt like forever. Then he did exactly what we were most afraid of. A loud crack rang out, and the axe blade punched right through part of the door. At that point, we all ran into the furthest room we could find and locked the door. We heard a few more heavy strikes against the front door, maybe 4 or 5, and then nothing. We didn't know if he had broken through or if he gave up, but we stayed put, too afraid to move. It took about 14 minutes for the first police car to get there, which was actually faster than we expected, given how deep we were in the woods. The front door had huge gashes in it from the axe, but luckily, it hadn't been broken all the way through. There was no sign of the man anywhere when the officers searched around. It's just assumed that he disappeared back into the woods. The most likely idea is that the man saw the light from my fire pit out there in the forest and made his way to the cabin because of it. But that still doesn't explain why he was wandering around the woods so late at night carrying an axe or why he came at us like that. We'll probably never know since they never caught him. And if you're wondering, no, we didn't stick around after that. We packed up and left as soon as we could. We also decided against moving to Wisconsin after all. This happened during a road trip last spring. I was taking a longer way back home after visiting some family, so I was driving about 4 hours a day to reach a new place each night. This was after my final visit. The only thing between me and home was about 8 hours of just empty forest as far as I knew. There was one more town I thought about stopping in, but it would have taken me too far off track, so I skipped it. I had left my last stop around 5:30 p.m. to reach the final Airbnb cabin I had rented, about 2 hours away. It happened to be directly on my way home, which is why I picked it. I figured it had to be better than staying at some cheap roadside motel in the middle of nowhere. Where I was driving, the land was mostly flat, but there were lots of trees here and there. When I pulled up to the cabin, it was obvious they had planted a straight row of tall pine trees right across the front of the property, with a gravel driveway splitting them. Honestly, the way it looked outside along with the empty woods gave me a weird feeling. I parked and used the padlock code that had been emailed to me by the owner. Even though the outside looked a little rough, the inside was clearly remodeled recently, probably just for Airbnb guests. It was small but really cozy. I didn't bother unpacking since I was only staying the night. I sat down at the little table and ate the fast food meal I had grabbed earlier. But only about 10 minutes after getting settled in, there was a knock at the door. It scared me because I hadn't heard a car pull up or any footsteps outside. I got up and opened the door. There was a man who looked around his late 30s, maybe early 40s, with a salt and pepper beard and a shaved head. "Hey, just came by to make sure you made it in all right," he said with a grin. Thinking it was the owner, I told him everything was good and thanked him. I wished him a good night and closed the door. It felt a little strange that he showed up out of nowhere just to check on me, but I figured maybe he lived close or even on another part of the property. Also, he had this really strong smell about him, like he'd been working outside all day. It was a little strange, but I didn't think much more about it. I went back to the table, finished my meal, and then jumped in the shower to relax. I was in there probably about 5 minutes before getting too tired and just wanting to get to bed. I dried off quickly and crawled into bed, scrolling through my phone for a while. Then there was another knock at the front door. It startled me just like the first time because, again, I hadn't heard anyone drive up or walk around outside. It had to be the owner again, but why so soon after he already checked in on me? Right away, I felt something was off and got really uneasy. I checked my phone, but there were no missed calls or texts. I slowly walked toward the main room while hearing him knock again and again. I wasn't sure if I should answer. I decided to just call out through the door, asking what he wanted. He stopped knocking. "Can you open the door? I just need to ask you one more thing." "I'll be quick, I swear," he said. I hesitated and didn't respond right away because I honestly didn't know what to say. After a few seconds of silence, he knocked again and asked if I could open up. I told him it was late, I was tired, and unless it was something urgent, I didn't want to be bothered. He didn't say anything back for a long time. The silence was incredibly creepy. After about a full minute of nothing, it felt even worse. I didn't hear any footsteps or a car leaving either. Was he just standing there? I tiptoed up to the door and peeked through the tiny window. He wasn't there. My heart dropped. I thought maybe he had snuck off. I should have heard him walk away on the gravel, right? But now I couldn't see him at all. I didn't know what to do. Everything about this felt wrong. I stood there frozen by the door, listening for any noise. I didn't want to move. Then my eyes drifted to the living room window, and that's when I saw him. His face was right there staring straight at me through the glass. I panicked and ran full speed back into the bedroom. I locked the door and called 911 right away. While waiting, I heard noises like he was trying to pry the window open. It was terrifying, but it also didn't make sense. If he was really the owner, wouldn't he have keys to everything? And that's when it finally clicked in my mind. He wasn't the real host. Police showed up a little while later. By then, he had already run off into the woods. They had no idea which way he went. Later, they contacted the real owner. Turned out he didn't live anywhere near the cabin, and he definitely hadn't sent anyone over to check on me. To this day, I don't know what that man's plan was. All I know is that he lied, and whatever he was trying to do wasn't anything good. I'm just thankful I didn't open the door. I live in southern Idaho, right on the edge of a tiny highway town. There's not much around here, just a few shops, gas stations, and a small inn lined up along the main road. All the streets leading out of town are dirt roads, winding through scattered houses and big stretches of private woods and open fields. This was a pretty normal day for me. I work remotely from home and wrapped up my shift around 5:30. After that, I decided to head into town to grab some groceries and pick up a few supplies for the house. Even though it's a highway town, the road doesn't actually get too much traffic, so none of the stores are ever too packed. I pulled into the lot and started my shopping. While I was there, though, I noticed a man watching me. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Probably just bad timing where I happened to glance over when he was already looking my way. I went back to getting my stuff, but a few minutes later, in another aisle, I noticed him again. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught him stepping into the same empty aisle as me, standing only about 5 or 6 feet off to my side. I kept facing forward, focusing on what I needed to find, but I could tell he wasn't really doing any shopping himself. I shifted my gaze a little without turning my head, and sure enough, he was staring at me. I said a quick hello and kept doing my thing. He didn't answer. Feeling a little weirded out, I grabbed the rest of what I needed and moved along. Honestly, I just figured he was a little odd, but I didn't overthink it. I checked out at the register, paid for everything, and headed back to my car. I usually park toward the back of the lot, so that's where I went. I loaded the groceries into the trunk, got in the driver's seat, and took a glance around the lot. There were maybe 30 or 40 other vehicles scattered around, but something about the atmosphere felt off. That's when I spotted him again. He was standing between 2 cars, staring straight at me. He wasn't carrying any shopping bags either. Didn't even look like he had bought anything. Something about him gave me a bad feeling. Maybe just a truck driver running on no sleep, I thought. I pulled out of the parking lot and started driving home. The sun had mostly dipped down by then, and the dirt roads were dark and silent. I pulled up to the front of my house, grabbed a couple of grocery bags, and went inside. While putting things away, my dad called, and we ended up talking for a bit, distracting me. After the call, I remembered the rest of the groceries and went back outside to grab them. That's when I noticed something strange. I had to squint into the dark for a moment to be sure, but a good distance off the side of the road, there was a pickup truck sitting there. Its lights were off, and the only reason I could make it out was the faint silhouette against the night sky. I own just under 45 acres of land, so wherever that truck was, it was definitely sitting on my property. I knew it hadn't been there when I got home, and if it had just pulled over by accident, why park without any lights? Keeping an eye on the truck the whole time, I slowly grabbed my bags and brought them inside. The best case scenario I could think of was that it was just some traveler who didn't want to spend money on a motel and thought this patch of land would be a good place to crash for the night. Even though it was on my land, I wasn't about to start something if I didn't have to. You never know who could be out there or what they might do. I tossed the rest of the groceries away quickly and pulled the front curtains open so I could keep an eye out. Over the next hour or so, I felt myself calming down about it. It had to just be someone sleeping in their truck. Weird, but harmless. I sat in the living room for another hour watching some TV. The truck never moved an inch. It got later, and I finally decided to close the curtains and head upstairs to bed. I think I fell asleep pretty fast. In the middle of the night, though, I woke up needing to use the bathroom. I didn't check the clock, but I guessed it was around 2:30 or 3 in the morning. Half asleep, I wandered across my bedroom and out into the hallway where the bathroom was. The second I opened the bathroom door, I heard a floorboard creak downstairs. I froze. That wasn't normal. I stood there, listening, then tried gently opening and shutting the door again, wondering if maybe that was what caused the noise. But nothing. I crept to the end of the hallway and looked down the stairs. It was pitch dark down there, just a soft glow of moonlight coming through the kitchen windows. Then I saw it, a moving shadow against the wall by the back hallway. I couldn't tell if whatever it was inside the house or maybe outside the back door, but my heart was pounding hard. I backed up slowly, slipped back into my room, and closed the door as carefully and silently as I could. I grabbed my phone and called the police, keeping my voice low. I stayed put and listened. At first, I didn't hear anything else, and I started to second-guess myself. Maybe I imagined it. But then, faint creaking noises came again. Someone moving slowly, almost carefully, across the floors downstairs. It sounded like they went into the living room. About a minute later, flashing lights lit up outside. I heard a scramble of quick footsteps downstairs, then the sound of the front door slamming open. Turns out the officers showed up just in time. They spotted the guy running across my field, heading back toward the truck. They caught him before he could drive away. And sure enough, it was the same creepy guy from the store. He told the police he was just trying to rob me, but the whole thing felt way too personal to be just that. Plus, he didn't have a backpack or anything to carry stolen stuff, and he knew I was home. He must have been watching the house for hours, waiting. Maybe he was even sitting in that truck the entire time while I moved around inside. What he really had in mind, I'd rather not think about.